And it's a Wednesday afternoon. We've had a really good day down at Banks. We're back at the college now. I thought I'd do this here because we've had quite a windy day. The weather's back with us, but we've made really good progress. The west cell's coming on really well. We've had another skull that was up against the southern wall, placed up in the corner, upside down. It still had some teeth surviving. And we've got another skull, a juvenile skull, that's appearing in the northern corner in this kind of area of undisturbed deposits. Having a think about this area and trying to work out the different phasing, bearing in mind it's stratigraphically disconnected from the passageway and the stones that are sloping into the other cells. But it does seem like this, the west cell's been treated differently. It's had a bit of a different history than the other cells. We've got this layer of slabs that was laid and above this initial backfilling that we're assuming fills the base of the cells and covers the original skeletal deposits. But then it does seem that the tomb is left open at this stage. We've got the otters coming in. They're leaving their spraying up and down the passageway, in the entrance passageway, in the central chamber, and they're obviously using this west cell as a halt. Now it seems that they're using the cell as a halt around some kind of human remains. There's certainly skulls, there's femurs, but the amount of bones that we're also getting out of this does suggest that this was perhaps used as some kind of secondary burial. There's a secondary use as a burial cell after the initial deposits were sealed off and the initial part of the tomb was sealed off. So it's really interesting. So our kind of staged backfilling may actually relate to a kind of reuse of the tomb, specifically in the west cell. And then the tomb was left open, the otters moved in, they were using the west cell as a halt, and then finally the tomb was sealed off after this sequence, sealed off, and the cells were sealed off, and the rest of the entrance passage was sealed off for good. So we're starting to really get an idea of the sequence now, and this kind of pause in the middle of the backfilling sequence may relate to the reuse of the west cell at a higher level during the later life of the monument. Below this layer of human skeletal remains, it's about that thick, and you can see below it where the machine cut is. There's a kind of relatively clean clay, which we're assuming at the moment is the sort of main backfill of the lower deposits. We're hoping to have a look at that early next week. We'll have to see how we get on with the weather. So a really interesting day in the west cell. The southern cell, we've been continuing to maintain our control conditions to try and get our DNA samples. We've been excavating the fan of material that's spilling into the cell from the entrance passage. There's clay deposits that continue from the central chamber, and a stony deposit that continues from the central chamber. But within this stony deposit, we found the top part, or the frontal part, of a skull that's actually placed physically within this upper backfill above the layer of slab. So that's really interesting, because in the east and the north cells there wasn't this stratigraphic relationship between the bone and the backfilling deposits. It wasn't clear whether the bones were placed in these cells before, sometime before the backfilling process, or within as part of this backfilling process, as these have been termed these closing deposits. But it does seem now that these bones were placed and then it was filled in immediately afterwards. So the otters were using this area perhaps above this layer of slabs. Although we haven't found spraying in the east and the north cell, there's some at the doorway of the south cell. And then these the bones, the skulls, the femurs are placed in these cells immediately before the final backfilling and sealing off. So it's kind of this closing sequence, closing deposits that we've been looking at. So we'll continue in the southern cell tomorrow. We're going to maintain our control conditions. We've got one DNA sample from this piece of skull by the entranceway. We're looking to get at least one more, and we're going to try and clean up and have a look inside this cell, see if we can find other pieces of bone that have been placed there as part of these closing deposits, similar to that found in the north cell. So the weather's supposed to be quite rough tomorrow, so we'll see how we get on.